Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jen Broxterman, and I'm so excited to bring Jonathan Goodman, who is an author. He's one of my mentors and coaches I've worked with in the past, and we are so excited to dive into his latest book, The Obvious Choice. So welcome, John.
Yeah, excited to be here. This is going to be fun. I'm excited to pick five. I picked 5 points from the book that I thought would be perfect for nutrition coaches. So this is going to be super fun.
Amazing. And I mean, I've been cheering you on, watching this book kind of come out of your heart, out of your brain. And I'm so excited because, I think it's just one of your best works of art, even though I've read probably almost everything you've written to date, including losing my passport inside one of your books. As we kind of joked about earlier, I came back from a conference and they gave us a couple of your books as like takeaways as a speaker. And my passport got placed between the pages in one of the books. Don't use your passport as a bookmark because it took me a while to find it on my bookshelf. And I might have missed a trip to New York guest speaking on a podcast because I couldn't leave the country.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm sorry.
That's my fault.
I don't feel bad because it's a good story, but I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah. So why don't we just dive right in, and maybe before we get into those 5 major, the obvious choice tips, give our viewers just a quick introduction to who you are, what your experience is in the fitness industry, and why you have the unbelievable massive following that you do, filled with raving fans.
Wow. I don't know what else to say after that. Thank you. What's cool about this is that my background is the fitness industry. It's where I come from. And so you will absolutely see as you read this book that it has this undertone of like, this guy's background is the fitness industry. And there's a lot of examples and things of in-person coaches, remote coaches, nutrition. And so that'd be really fun because that's where I come from. I mean, I was a trainer at the University of Western Ontario in London, which you know well.
Yep.
Where I did my kinesiology degree. Like I was a trainer 1 week after my 18th birthday, and then started full-time after kinesiology degree. And I trained full-time. Then I wrote a book called Ignite the Fire while I was training my clients. Started a website. The website grew into the biggest website in the world for personal trainers. It's like 4 to 6 million uniques that we had a year on that website at its height, sort of from 2013 to 2019 or so. Is when we were going hard on content, on blog content on that website. So I've published something like over 800 other coaches on there.
Wow.
Which is really cool because then you just get this wisdom of the best in the world. And I'm like publishing it and editing it and things like that. And then, we had a big team of editors at one point, but start to learn from the best of the best of the best, not just the business, but like the queuing and things like point number 1 that I'm going to talk about, imposter syndrome and how common it is and what we need to think about this and how we need to approach this and what we need to know about this, and started to be able to pull out like great stories that we found really resonated as well, which was really cool. But then over the years, what I kind of did is opposite of what most people do. Most people are like, oh, I have a business, I have a product, I have a service. I need to create content. I need to build a community to sell my thing. I did the opposite. Not because I was doing it on purpose, I just didn't know. But I created a community and built a ton of content. And then I just spoke to them and basically said, what do you need? And then I went and built it.
Yeah.
And so I've done 8 digital programs, 5 conferences, 3 membership sites, 12 books, a certification.
I mean, you've done it all.
I mean, I've done it all.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am so excited then to jump into those 5 things. And I mean, we both come from the fitness and nutrition industry. Who we really try to serve is coaches with the biggest, best hearts who are obviously following their passion and they have an interest in supporting others to live a healthy lifestyle. And I think both of us want to see every coach who's put themselves into the arena go and succeed and not burn out. They need to be able to start making money quickly and in that first year because they need to have that quality of life in order for them to keep going and have the impact that they want. So let's just get right into, I think you hinted at it, tip number 1, which is all about facing, I think, what's inside your mind and imposter syndrome.
Let me tell you a story to back this up. So at the University of Western Ontario, this is the most Western story to ever Western story. My roommate decided that he wanted to fry potatoes. And so what he did is he cut potatoes up into little cubes. He put them in a pan in like an inch of oil, and then he went and smoked a joint and fell asleep. And what happened was, I don't remember whether I was home or not, but either way, I walked into the kitchen and the pan's on fire.
Totally.
Because
You have a blazing kitchen fire at this point on your
we
pan.
have a kitchen fire, and so there's flames coming up off of the pan. So I grab the pan and I bring it out into the driveway, which was really smart that I did that, because the next thing that I did was really, really stupid, which is I went and I got a bucket of water
Oh no,
and I tossed the bucket of water onto this fire. Now, oil and water don't mix.
they do not.
And so what happens is when you try to mix oil and water, the water particles naturally push away the oil particles. Well, if the oil particles are on fire, this turns into a fucking fireball. And so for anybody who knows anything about putting out fires, they know that you don't put water on a grease fire. I did not know this at the time. Fortunately, I was on my driveway. And so I didn't burn down my house. Now, imagine you're a firefighter and it's your first day on the job. And somebody calls you and they say to you, you got to come over. There's a fire, 911, whatever. You go to the house, you notice it's a grease fire. You take a dry chemical extinguisher, you blow it on the fire, then you turn off the heat source
Hmm.
and you suffocate it and you let it
Smother it.
self-extinguish. And you smother it. And then you tell the family, hey, next time this happens, turn off the heat source, put another pan on top of it, put baking powder on it if you can, and let it self-extinguish. That family would be ecstatic because what you've done is you've solved their problem. They don't care if you are a first day firefighter
Totally.
because the knowledge that you have was enough knowledge to solve their problem. Now, to other firefighters, well, they might laugh at you because of how little you know. Or
Hmm.
you might think that they're laughing at you. They probably aren't. But you might think that they're laughing at you because of how little that you know. But to the people who you were serving, you solved their problem.
Yeah, you knew enough in that moment to be the
You knew
hero.
enough in that moment. Nutrition, for most people who buy the services of nutrition coaches, is not particularly complicated. Now, this isn't to say that you should not always be developing yourself in terms of the information and the knowledge that you gain. You should, absolutely. But you also have to appreciate that there is a serious rate of diminishing returns past a relatively low level of nutrition knowledge and behavioral psychology and motivational interviewing knowledge that you
Hmm.
need in order to solve the problem of the vast majority of clients that are going to hire you. And so, number one, you compare yourself to other coaches who might know more than you because they've been in the industry longer, they create content, they write articles, maybe they do studies, whatever. You compare yourselves to them and there's imposter syndrome. Oh, why would anybody hire me when Jen is out there creating certifications around this stuff, right? But you actually already know enough to put out that fire.
Yeah.
And so what do you do then? I have it success-wise, actually, your success in your career is largely dependent not on how much you know about your core knowledge pertaining to your industry, but that you know enough about your core knowledge, again, which is a relatively low level,
Hmm.
which you probably already do now if you're watching this, and how well you're able to combine that knowledge with what I call a series of leapfrog skills, complementary skills that help exponentially increase your chances of success in your industry. So what are some of these skills? Behavioral psychology. Do you understand the cognitive biases and are able to ethically take advantage of them?
Yeah.
Do you understand money, wealth management,
Hmm.
business writing,
Yep.
for example? Presentation skills, communication skills are just
Hmm.
some of the examples that I lay out in the book. Most people, the problem that they run into, a lot of nutrition coaches, is they themselves are so obsessed with nutrition. They themselves are so just deeply embedded in a world of other nutrition coaches that they're too close to their own world and they believe, for a whole host of reasons, that the secret to their success is to learn more about the thing they already know enough about that
Right.
causes imposter syndrome. And it also blinds them to the reality of why people buy or how you can actually solve somebody's problem or better serve them beyond counting their macros, beyond the little bit of motivational interviewing that they might need, or habit stacking that they might need. I believe that year one in an industry, you should spend your professional development time about 25% on leapfrog skills, 75% on industry specific skills.
Hmm.
I think year two, it should be about 50-50. And I think year three onwards, you should actually spend about 75% of your time on leapfrog skills and 25% on industry specific.
I love that you broke that down as a percent because something I took from you as a mentor when I went through your certification years ago is you taught us the two golden rules, which is get really good at what you do and then get really good at talking about and letting other people know what you do. And at that time, I was like, ooh, I keep spending my continuing education money on just getting better at what I already do. And of course, I became very, very good as a nutrition coach. And I was like, John's calling me out. That is my big business blind spot. I am not putting the same effort and financial investment into what you're calling these leapfrog skills. And now that you've broken it down, I know. And now that you've broken it down as a percentage, I have a rule that at minimum per year, I take one course that makes me better at what I do. And at the absolute minimum, another type of, bigger investment in getting better at the leapfrog skills of copywriting, marketing, website design, financial stuff. And as I've gotten more and more successful, you're right, that ratio in those supporting outside skills is more and more where my investment in time and money and energy units have gone. And exponentially, the business has gotten better and better and better. So I think that's really cool for coaches to hear where they are in their trajectory. Is in the beginning, you just have to get better at what you're doing.
Yeah, you got to get good enough.
Yeah.
You got to get good enough. For sure, you got to.
But there's a rate of diminishing return of always just getting better there.
And
Yeah.
like way earlier than people think, which I think is perhaps the most surprising element of this. Like, I would consider myself to have been a mediocre to just okay personal trainer. Way back when I was training people full time. I wasn't bad. I had a kinesiology degree, but I was also 22 years old. Like, how good
Right.
could I have been
Right.
possibly,
Yeah.
So, but what made me successful, I mean, about that time, I would have been one of the most successful trainers in the city in Toronto. I was being charged out at $97 an hour, as much as you could charge back then. This is like
Totally.
2008, 2009. And training 35, 40 hours a week, referring my overload of clients to other trainers. I was the senior trainer at the club, earning a salary for that as well.
Right.
I was 22 years old. And so, even though I was admittedly a very mediocre trainer, what I did have that other trainers did not have at that point was I also had a mediocre to low level skill set in writing and in behavioral psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went out and I gained those. Like, I learned those. Like, it wasn't that I went to school for them. I went to school for kinesiology.
Right.
And then over the years, what I've done is I've gained a mediocre to low level skill set of a host of these different skills that you gain over time. And I have a process called leapfrog learning. We don't really have time to get into, but it's in the book where the beautiful thing about this philosophy towards success over time in your career is that there's kind of two paths that you can take. You know what I'm saying, Jen? Like, path number one is to try to become the best in the world, right?
Right.
To try to become like the Andy Galpins of the world, for example, where you're truly world class. And Andy's a friend, and he's like, dude, I'm so proud of you for this book, but like, I'm not going to read it. Don't even bother sending it to me. Like, I'm just not interested ever in reading anything about business. And he's just so obsessed in his own world. So path number one that you can take is to spend your entire career and try to become truly the best in the world.
Right.
And it is possible to have tremendous success that way. There's not a lot of space at the top. You don't have to speak to a lot of academics to learn that most of them don't feel like they are being fairly compensated or respected in terms of prestige as they should be for the work that they're doing. But some are able to. It takes a very, very long time where you make a very small amount of money. and a lot of frustration, but you might be able to break through, right? It's just hard.
Hmm.
Path number two is what I'm describing, which is to appreciate this rate of diminishing returns. I probably know enough about what I know to get people results. Other people in my industry might not be impressed by me,
Yeah.
but that's fine because they're not whose problems I'm trying to solve
Yeah.
anyway. And as you become more successful, people will start asking you what you did anyway, and they maybe all this imposter syndrome actually is nonsense, and it's in your own head. But you got to go through it for long enough to realize that. And what you can do then, and the beautiful part about this is it really doesn't take a very long time to gain any of these additional skill sets.
Hmm.
By definition, you only need a low to mediocre ability in all of them. You can gain it with 60 days of focus, and
Hmm.
then you can put it in your backpack and move on to the next, or just chill out and enjoy being there for a little bit of time. Like in any of these three departments of call it, fitness training and then behavioral psychology and writing, if you were to look at my skill and knowledge and abilities compared to other people in that industry independent of one another, I
Right.
would have been mediocre to just okay.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, because you hinted at this earlier about the obvious choice, and the word simplicity was something that you dropped a hint about, especially with the different business models where you've, scaled to six figures and well beyond. Maybe moving on to another point on our list so we can get through all six, because I know there's so many diamonds you're going to be sharing with us today. Was that one of your topics, or am I just, maybe it's another little side tangent on the importance of simplicity and not overwhelming ourselves?
Simplicity underlies everything that I do and have done and will always do.
Right.
So no, it's not one of the topics, but I can skip forward to one that kind of hits on it a little
Yeah.
bit more. And business writing really comes down into, and how you become a great business writer is tell a story, restate that story in a more general sense, um, or tell a story, tell the problem from the story, restate the problem in a more general sense, give the steps to solving the problem, conclude, get out of the story.
Hmm.
Like that's it. Boom, 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 boom. And so, that's what I try to do in all of these. So here's a story for you. Google has an innovation lab called X. It's where they put a couple $1 billion into it every year, and they try to make moonshot bets. They don't just try to like move forward, they try to do exponential leaps. And the guy who runs it, his name is Astro Teller, which of course his nickname is Astro, but the guy who runs it, his name is Astro Teller, and he has this. He put forward this thing where he said that every single document proposal that's put forward has to have the hashtag monkey first on it.
Monkey first.
So
Okay.
I changed his example but to make it a bit more funny. His was a monkey reciting Shakespeare, which isn't funny enough for me, so I changed it to a monkey juggling flaming sticks. So
Okay.
it goes like this. Imagine that you want to get a monkey performing on a pedestal, juggling flaming sticks. You have two jobs. Job number one is to build the pedestal. Job number two is to try to teach a monkey to juggle flaming sticks.
Yeah.
Okay. You know that you can do job number one. You
Hmm.
know that you can build the pedestal. It might be hard, it might cost money, it might take a bit of time, but you know that you can complete it. The unknown, the bottleneck is, can you get your monkey to juggle sticks?
Right.
Most people, because it feels like progress, will start with building the pedestal. Very few people will actually test the assumption of whether they can get a monkey to juggle sticks.
Right.
Okay, what are all of the pedestal tasks in business? Creating a corporation, finding the best microphone, studying how to A/B test thumbnails, consuming content like Hormozis, which is all generally pretty superficial. It's tactical. That's why it works on social media. On social media, there is obvious and non-obvious content. Obvious content is very superficial, very quick hit. Call it business porn for the mind,
Yep.
right? And then you have non-obvious content, which is the deeper stuff that really deeply matters, which is the nuance. You know, social media content is always going to have both the beginning and the end snipped off. And it's only going to be this tiny little moment in time. And so you consume way too much of that content. You try to find the best phone or editing program, or you spend all your time learning how to do Canva. Really, though, what you have not done is you haven't figured out if you can get your monkey to juggle fire. Will anybody buy your shit?
Hmm.
How, and so until you can prove that assumption, none of the other stuff matters. And all of the other stuff, that you can do, right? Those are all figure outable problems.
Yep.
That really either you can hire somebody else to do, or, like you have a videographer behind you, right? Like
Yep.
you have not mastered videography.
Not at all.
I mean, you knew enough about it to hire a videographer.
Yes, exactly.
And the same with me. I mean, I laugh about how janky my content is. I just, doesn't matter to me.
Hmm.
So monkey first, are you focusing on what matters? Are you actually speaking to humans
Hmm.
and saying, hey, can I talk to you about my thing? And the best way to go about this, actually, using the esteemed advice of the great philosopher that goes by the name Pitbull, he said, ask for money, get advice. Ask for advice, get money twice.
Yeah.
And so when you outreach to people, even people that your goal is not to sell them, you say, hey, I'm thinking of building a program for moms to help them take better control of their fitness and their health. In order to do that, I need to learn a lot more about the day-to-day of a busy mom that might have two young kids.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to you and learn more about you for 15 minutes or so. Can we get on the phone? And so you're asking them for advice, right? That's how you get these initial phone calls. And before you do anything, I mean, this is the secret that nobody talks about, because you can't make money selling this information on the internet. But actually, 90% of all sales in all industries for all products happen through mostly offline word of mouth.
Yes. Yep.
By the time you can see it, by the time you can measure it, anything that you see online, any ads, any social media, is actually the scraps after all of the obvious choices have been hired. You just don't see it.
Yep.
You just don't see it. And so, monkey first. You really don't need to be more efficient. You really don't need to be doing more things most of the time. You need to be better at choosing what you're doing and what you're ignoring, and putting more effort and focus into the few things that you're choosing to do.
And I love that you even use the word ignoring. Like, I have to remind myself all the time as a business owner, I have permission to ignore this. This doesn't serve my ideal customer. This doesn't bring in revenue. This doesn't contribute to profits. This doesn't reduce my stress, and it's okay to just ignore it. Like, ignoring things is a decision that you're allowed to make. So yeah, it's just permission that you don't have to do it. And especially as you grow more successful, there's more and more things coming at you. There's more and more requests. There's more and more demands of your time and energy. And sometimes ignoring is like a perfectly acceptable way to handle something. There's that human guilt to it, but it's a muscle you have to.
Guilt, and then there's the, again, we'll talk about the problem of too much information. It's not one of my 5 or I don't know, maybe 6 points that I'm getting into here, but optimistic ignorance is a chapter in the book. And I think that too many of us these days are pessimistically overinformed.
Yeah.
And we actually need to return back to a point of blissful, optimistic ignorance. Now, of course, there are many corollaries to that. You need to avoid catastrophic failure. You need to make sure that you're on the right road for you. But if you speak to anybody honestly about their path to success, not what they do now once they've already figured some shit out, right? But like how they got to where they're going, actually, it's akin to driving on this really, really pitch black road where you've got 100 miles to drive, and there's going to be twists and turns, and your brights are on, and you can only see 100 meters in front of you with your brights. But every time that you drive 100 meters, your next 100 meters illuminates, and so on and so on and so on, pulling you forward to that destination.
Yeah.
That is the process of success, is understanding that no matter where you are, you can always figure out the next step. But if you try to shine your lights too bright on too many things, you're going to be so overwhelmed and you're not going to be able to find the right turnoff. You're not going to be able to
Right.
drive that path. And these days, there are too many, I would call them convincing con men that exist in the world that are just so good at communicating short, quick hits of very sticky, portable stories and information that is not necessarily bad information, but you have to appreciate that good information can also simultaneously be bad advice for you.
Right.
And ostensibly, this book, The Obvious Choice, is really a book about appreciating the fact that there are different games that you get to choose to play these days in this world.
Right.
And perhaps the most important decision that you're ever going to make is what game you're playing, because every game has its own rules, time horizons, odds of success, and reward mechanisms. And every game is fine. The game of trying to win the internet is a wildly different game than the game of trying to build a business, though.
Right.
And if you desire the rewards of one game and you conflate that with the rules of the other, you're going to burn out. You're going to fall prey to a lot of these convincing con men. You're going to listen to a lot of great information that's bad advice. I'll jump into the next point, which is a lot of people these days are following what I call human avoidance marketing, which is HAM, is the acronym, HAM. You don't have to go very far to feel, you don't have to exist very long on the internet to feel like you're pushing up against this almost invisible barrier that you just can't get through, right? There's this frustration bubbling underneath the surface right now in this business cultural zeitgeist where it's like we're working so hard, but we don't really know why. Question mark, question mark, question mark. We're told it's going to lead to profit, but that middle step is missing. But maybe if I just take prettier pictures, or, even though I've been doing this thing on Instagram for so long, maybe the secret is to do it a little bit harder, a little bit more intensely for a little bit longer. And then somehow it's going to magically not work better, but like start working even a little bit.
Yes.
It's crazy. The goal of any business is to become a monopoly as fast as possible. The easiest and fastest way to become a monopoly is to figure out the smallest available market that you can first monopolize and monopolize them. And then you just build adjacent to that market if you decide you want to expand. PayPal started with 30,000 eBay power sellers. Facebook started on Harvard campus. Nike started with Phil Knight selling running shoes out of the back of his Plymouth Valiant at local track meets.
Yeah, track teams. Yep.
We miss this in these stories of even the biggest companies in the world, that every single one of them does exactly what I'm telling you to do right now, which is you have to start with the smallest available market. You have to build what's inside of your fence first. You have to become famous to the family first. This is not me saying to you that you have to accept that you'll never be big. It's how even the biggest companies in the world started. You just don't, even in the biographies and autobiographies of these stories, you gloss over those points because they're the beginning of the story. But most of us, our entire life is the beginning of the story of a multi-billion-dollar business, because the beginning of their story was still making a few $1,000,000 a year.
Yes.
Which is crazy. And so I ask you, are you focusing on what's inside of your fence? Are you focusing on people that are close to you, either physically or metaphorically? Most coaches never need to work with anybody ever who lives more than 5 miles away. That does not mean that they can't work online.
Yep.
This is the misconception. Just because you work online doesn't mean you have to coach somebody who lives in Positos, the beachside barrio of Uruguay. It's going to be way more expensive, way more difficult. and you're probably not going to even be able to do as good of a job because culturally it's going to be different too, working with that person than somebody who lives 5 miles away, or somebody who is the sister of somebody who lives 5 miles away from you, because that's how these things grow. That's how these things always grow. And so I ask you, how much are you actually building off of the connections and the geeky interests and the communities that you already exist within?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't have the time or the resources or the desire or the energy, and I'm simply not good looking enough to compete with a 22-year-old fitness model.
Right.
That is an insane, who has 16 hours a day, basically every waking minute to think about social media, to network with social media, to train, and to film videos. That is an insane proposition, to think that in my 30 minutes of marketing time, maybe that I get every day on top of all of the other responsibilities of being a grown-ass adult, I'm going to somehow beat them.
Right.
How do you beat Michael Jordan? Like, you don't play basketball.
Right.
That's
Or
the answer.
define the game. Like, I often take long breaks from social media with no dip in income to my business, because a lot of the game that I'm playing and winning is I'm the 5 mile celebrity. I am the go-to registered dietitian, nutrition coach in London, Ontario. Our website is really well written. The copy has been polished, so it speaks to our ideal client of who we're trying to help. And people, when they land, are like, yes, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And or it's almost entirely driven by word of mouth referrals, which is get so good or good enough at what you do that the way you care for people and the customer client journey is so well thought out that they market for me. They just tell all their friends and family.
And that will
So,
happen. That will happen organically as you do a good job.
right.
And then, we can talk about referrals too. And referrals are a different beast altogether. But you speak to anybody in the world in business, and they will say that the most valuable customer is a referred customer. They are easiest to sell. They
Yes.
generally have the highest lifetime value, and they will refer more people to you because referring has become normalized. But then you look at the information ecosystem that teaches business owners. And when was the last time you heard anything about teaching referrals? And
Right.
the reason is because the information that you hear is not necessarily the most important information. It's the easiest information to communicate.
Right.
Referrals are by definition a social trade, a psychological transaction. They are not an economic transaction. As a result, they are more difficult to teach around. Therefore, even though they're more important, you don't hear that much about them. And so what you just described as referrals, but how do you start this then, right? In a local business, how do you become famous to the family locally? And I love the example of a local podcast. This is me saying that you can use the same media to become a local celebrity. And local could be local to an online family as well, right? It doesn't have to
Totally.
be local to people who live close to you, but famous to your family. This podcast, of course, the Best of Etobicoke, is produced by my gym, is produced by my nutrition coaching company. Again, your nutrition coaching company doesn't need to even have a brick and mortar place. You could just live in that neighborhood.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You could operate out of your home. It doesn't matter. It's produced by that. The websites or the podcasts are on whatever Spotify and stuff, but you host them on your website. And then at the end of every one, you say, this was great. Mrs. Smith, I really enjoyed learning about you and your incredible business and your background and your parents and how that inspired you. How incredible, I want to keep this going. Do you have one or two other leaders in the community that you could introduce me to do this? Well, now they're going to introduce you, said another way, refer you
Yep.
to somebody else. Referrals are simply a transference of trust from one person to the next. That's all that they are. So Mrs. Smith, might be looking for coaching services. People admire Mrs. Smith. She might be able to refer you or be your customer. Either way, she's going to introduce you to other people. Within a month of doing these, call it 3 months, you're going to have the single best network of all of the movers and shakers and influential people in your neighborhood of
Yes.
anybody, anywhere.
Yep. I call this, when I work with my Prosper Nutrition students, finding the super connectors in your community. So, how do you go and build the relationships with someone who then has a network of people that one connection you've made maybe is your in to public speak in front of their audience or to serve their audience in some way? And it's a little bit like drilling for oil, where you try to make as many connections human to human. And then sometimes, like, I call it striking gold. There was a triathlon coach I did a little free nutrition talk for 15 years ago, and she still sends me like 20 clients a year from her triathlon roster. And I am the obvious choice of like, hey, you're in sports nutrition. You got to go work with Jen and her team. She takes great care of my triathletes. And yeah, super connectors.
You will find that there is I mean, this is almost like Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point, right? There are mavens. You will find that the majority of people will be sent to you from one or a few sources. Like I counted at one point as a personal trainer, over 80% of my clients came to me as direct or indirect referrals from Kathy, who was a 67-year-old woman who had never been in the gym with arthritic fingers and 2 knee replacements.
Go, Kathy.
Like,
yeah.
And she was just a client of mine. But I trained her, her husband, her 2 best friends, her daughter, her daughter's husband, 2 of her daughter's best friends, and her daughter's husband organized for me a boot camp with 5 of his other buddies.
Amazing. Well, bring us home with the last couple of tips on our obvious choice list. This has just been a treasure trove of great information to help coaches succeed.
Yeah, I don't know how many you're going to count here. We kind of bounced around it.
That's okay. Don't worry about the number.
What I will do is I will give you something sort of tactical here. Everybody feels like you should be making content, and I feel like you should be creating content. I said at the beginning, you have to look at your content, at your social media, and how you create content. I don't care, right? Like, it all works. Like, are you going to do a podcast? Are you going to do YouTube? Are you going to do what social media account are you going to do? I don't care. It all works. You just can't do it all. So pick one damn thing. So here's how I break it down, how to view content. I give it a 4-stage content creation framework, right? And I'll run through each stage really quick, and then I'll tell you a bit more about each one. So stage 1, create it for yourself. Stage 2, create it for your customers. Stage 3, create it for your industry. Stage 4, create it for the world. Okay, let's break these down. Stage 1, when you are newer in the game, you create content selfishly for yourself as a way to learn. The best way to learn is to teach. Content is a phenomenal way to learn because it's a phenomenal way to teach. In order to deeply understand anything that we're studying, anything that we're learning, you kind of need to think through it in a way outside of your own head and teach it objectively to people who don't have the backgrounds and the biases and the other understandings that you have. It forces your brain to do something with that information that is very unhuman and very difficult, which is to teach it.
Okay.
And so in stage 1, you use your content as a way to learn. Okay. You get your customers elsewhere. You get your clients elsewhere. Stage 2 are, you now have some customers. You're creating content for them. You're answering their questions. Nothing that you've studied or learned. You've read the same books. You've listened to the same podcasts. Nothing that you know right now is like extraordinary. You know the same thing as everybody else, but to you people, it has value because basically telling them,
it's like the firefighter helping you not to throw water on a grease fire.
Right. It has a lot of value. And so at this point, you're creating content for your customers as a nurturance, retention, perhaps referral engine. Write a newsletter for the members of your coaching service. The content on your social media, you're doing it as a way to help your people. You're not measuring it based off of whether it goes viral.
Right.
I believe that most business owners, most nutrition coaches should actually stay in stage 2 for the entirety of their careers. That's the 80-20. You get 80% of the benefits of content. You see, content is most best used as a way to convert attention generated elsewhere, not generate attention itself.
Right. Yeah.
It's best used as a nurturance and conversion tool than it is as a lead generation tool. And so you get many of the benefits of content without all of the drawbacks of comparison, this just insane cycle of burnout, that,
Did this go viral enough? Why don't I have enough likes and follows on it? Yeah.
I know this all too well, and I'm sure you do, Jen. And I
Yeah.
mean, almost everybody that I speak to across an entire sphere of success. I mean, I know people who have sold their businesses for $1 billion plus. They struggle with this shit too.
Mm.
So it's not just you, it's all across the board.
Yep.
And the reason is they've never taken the time to say, what bucket am I in? What am I measuring the success of what I'm doing against? You see, Goodhart's law states that when the measure becomes the goal, it ceases to be a good measure.
Yeah.
Social media's goals are not your goals. Their goal is for you to stay on social media and create free content on social media as much as possible.
Yeah.
Therefore, the insights, the metrics that they're going to give you correspond to their desired outcomes.
Yes.
Not yours.
Yeah.
Right. And so those measures, the metrics, the likes, the follows, engagement may be an instrumental goal. They may be representative of something where you want to get, but they're not the final goal. They're not where you want to get to. And so you can't measure your success based off of that. Like in my coaching business, we measure the success of our content based off of how many inbound DM inquiries we get as a result of the content. And we've become more sophisticated over time to the point where now we have enough data and long-term data to actually be able to measure not just inbound DM inquiries, but whether they convert to clients and customers of ours.
Yeah. The quality
And
of the
so
inquiry. Yeah.
what's interesting is that you can look at my Instagram page and I can get 10,000 plus likes on any given day on a piece of content. It's not hard. I have the following there. I know how to create the content for it. But then you look, and if you go on like a desktop and you scroll over the posts and you look like, oh, John has some posts that get like 100 likes. And then he has some posts that get 50,000. Those 100 likes must be failures. I got news for you. Those 100 likes are the posts that generate the business that converts to the customers.
Yeah.
And that's why we do it. So most people should stay at stage 2 basically forever. But what sometimes starts to happen is you start to have success if you do stage 2 properly. This was me in my career. I had a blog, 𝘲𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And I started to go viral on that blog. I would write, I gave my clients an award every month. I called it the half badge, the hardest fuck badge, whoever was the hardest as fuckest client of mine. And I'd write about them on my blog. And then I would answer questions. Somebody would come in and they'd say, does fruit make me fat? And I'd write a blog about fruit makes me fat. Well, that blog happened to go viral. I didn't try to make it go viral, but people passed it along to one person and another person, another person. And over time, this work began to get the attention of influential people in the fitness industry. And so while I was this little personal trainer at this gym in Toronto, writing a blog in retrospect in stage 2, right, for my clients, I was named one of the, what was it? I think 24 best personal trainers you've never heard of by Livestrong, which at that point was the biggest fitness information website in the world.
Yep.
I was included in Men's Health book, like I contributed some workouts to it. And I became a contributor to Arnold Schwarzenegger's blog.
Wow.
I was still working with my clients full time in the gym, right? But other people started to notice. And what's also interesting about that is despite going viral multiple times, despite all these other things that happened, none of them contributed to a single client ever in the gym.
Interesting.
Which is also interesting.
And helpful to, I think, share with listeners, right?
But what started to happen was that other people in my industry started to ask me what I was doing. And so then I started to write about what I was doing as a personal trainer. And this is when you begin to transition into stage 3, if you choose to do it, which is you create content for your industry. You create content for your industry. Think about the stuff that you buy outside of fitness and nutrition. Do you follow those people on social media? Do you even know if they have a social media account? You don't. You follow people in your own industry because there are things that you're interested in. You share things that are articulations of your own thoughts and desires and frustrations. Not because you're going to buy from those people, because it's an easier way to talk about what you want to talk about. And so actually, if you want to build a platform and a brand online, and you want to get more followers, the fastest and quickest way to do it is actually to become famous in your industry first, because they're by definition the people who are going to share your stuff. You yourself would never look at a plumber's blog.
Right.
And so if a plumber wants to generate more business for their plumbing business, they're not going to create content around plumbing. If a plumber wants to become a well-known plumber to other plumbers and wants to build businesses that serve other plumbers, they create content pertaining to plumbing.
Right.
And so what you can do here is you can start creating content, and this is where follower count and likes and engagement starts to matter, right? Once you get to this point. And then you create a community of people in your own industry, and then you talk to them, and you are also your own best customer. And you can perhaps build a business or become an affiliate or promote businesses that serve gaps or holes in your industry as other sources of income. I mean, this is what you've done, Jen.
Yeah.
And then, eventually, maybe you get to the point where you transition into stage 4, which is you create content for the world. This is thought leadership. But thought leadership is not about the quality of content. It's about the earned reputation of the individual. There's this wonky misconception that you have to do dope shit on the internet in order to enable you to do dope shit in the real world. It's the opposite. You got to do dope shit in the real world first, and then you perhaps amplify that by talking about it in a dope way. Elon Musk put out a tweet about sleep a while back. I don't even remember what it said. It was like, have your head up like so-and-so inches, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, basic advice, it was a tweet. And it had 30,000 plus retweets and over 300 likes. And I was like, oh, maybe there's something about this content that's really special. So I copied his tweet word for word.
Right.
And I tweeted it. And at that point, I did nothing on Twitter. And so I had 1 like on his tweet. The difference is not the content, right? The difference is that he's Elon Musk and I'm not.
Right.
And objectively, his advice wasn't even very good advice. His tweet was not a very good tweet. You see, thought leadership is about the earned reputation of the individual. You get there as a result of doing the right kind of work the right way and having actual tangible success. And you make sure people know about it, particularly in your industry first, for decades. Like, this is my first real work, this book, The Obvious Choice, for the world. It's published by HarperCollins. I got a really good book deal. I've already signed the next really good book deal with HarperCollins for the next book, which is coming out in early 2026. I have written over 15 million words on the internet, published 1,500 articles, done all of these other business things we were talking about. I started my blog in 2011, and I've created content and done work and built businesses and thought about it almost every single day since 2011. That's going to be 14 years before I begin to attempt to transition into stage 4, which is thought leadership. It takes time, it takes work, and you can't fake it.
Yeah, I like how you used earned reputation. It's earned.
The reason why we value reputation so much is because it's the one thing that you can't cheat.
Yeah, you can't buy it, you can't rush it. Yeah, only can earn it through your actions, choices, and relationships that you've built.
You got it. You got it. You said you wanted to do 20, 25 minutes, right?
Yeah, we're a little bit over, but that is okay. This has been so insightful. And I guess, here's a great place to throw one last question at you. If you were to take anything from your book, anything from all the different business models that you've built, and try to help for my audience, which is nutrition coaches, fitness coaches, which is obviously the background you come from, let's say in their first 5 years of being in business, what's the one thing you would want to really hammer home that is from your book, The Obvious Choice? How do they become the obvious choice? There's many things, but
a lot of the problem that business coaches hit, or that business coaches, a lot of problem that nutrition coaches hit after they've had a little bit of success after a year or two in the industry is that they trade in a good business model for a bad one. They think that in an attempt to scale, They need, oh, I have enough clients. Um, I'm too busy. I'm still not making as much as I want. I need to scale. So therefore, I need to build a really shitty low-end membership site, or I
Yes.
need to sell, low-end ebooks or affiliate this supplement or whatever it is. And and what they're doing is they're trading in a good business model. Coaching is a great business model when done right.
Right.
You can scale it if you know how to scale it. Like,
Hmm.
the reason that you are over busy is because you have not figured out how to run a good business yet. I run two coaching businesses, both of which profit a few $1 million a year. I have not coached a single day in either of them. Um, Coaching businesses are phenomenal businesses to own.
Hmm.
You may decide you still want to work in them in some capacity. You may not, like me. Um, they kick off a lot of cash up front. They're highly profitable. We
Hmm.
operate ours at a 65% profitability. They're highly
Amazing.
profitable. You work with great people. You can pick and choose and select the people that you want to work with and say, no, thank you. I think you're great, but you don't fit our coaching model to the people you don't want to work with.
Yep.
Once you build them properly, passive income is not a membership site. Passive income is not ebooks. That is a different business model that by definition needs more people paying you less amount of money,
Right.
that are going to be worse customers, less profitable, and they're going to churn more, and they're going to get worse results
Yes.
from you. Not to say it can't work, but it's way harder. And
Hmm.
the oldest form of passive income is still the best form of passive income. Invest your money.
Hmm.
Run a great coaching business. Run it at a high profitability. Get a good business coach teaching you how to scale that business coaching or that coaching business if you don't have one.
Hmm.
And take that money
Send it
and
off to
learn
work.
how the best way to make money is with money.
Hmm.
The secret that most people don't want you to know about business is that really, if you want to generate real wealth, the best way to do that is to run an active business as a way to generate money so that you can make real money with your money.
Yeah.
You're going to make way more money with money than you are ever doing anything else. I run a bunch of great businesses. I can tell you right now, my investments make far more money than my businesses do.
Yes. Yeah.
So the number one piece of advice that I have is to not fall prey to the passive income fallacy.
Hmm. That's so great. So great for coaches to hear. Well, John, thank you so much for generously sharing your time. This book is going to be a game changer for so many coaches in the industry. And congrats on already signing your next book deal.
The book is almost done. I got one chapter left.
Wow, you're flying through that one.
No, no, it doesn't feel like that.
I mean, that's a testament to success, right? Is it looks like it just is this overnight success that pops off, but it's all the sweat equity that goes into any successful coach or business model out there.
And what we talked about is just focus and prioritization.
Yeah.
To me, writing is my one thing. Like, what's your one thing? And so everything that I do points towards it. The only reason that I have a podcast is because my podcast workshops concepts that I'm writing about for my book.
Right.
If other people listen to it and engage an audience, that's a happy byproduct. Everything that I do points towards my one thing, which is books. So,
Amazing.
to you, like, what's your one thing?
Yeah.
Would be my question. And how can you engineer and design everything else that you do professionally to point towards that one thing? It does not have to be the greatest opportunity. Published books are not the best opportunity that I have available to me to make the
Right.
most amount of money. I promise you.
Right.
But, for whatever reason, it's
It's your
what
gift you're meant
I
to share.
both love and despise at the same time. It's masochistic at its core, but I love it.
Well, guys, make sure you go grab a copy of The Obvious Choice and just check out, honestly, anything Jonathan Goodman has written. Every one of his books is just filled with wisdom that I've taken back. And like you said, those leapfrog skills, you were one of my first mentor that really started to help me leapfrog and add these other skills outside of just being a world-class nutrition coach. So So
And look at where you are now. And it's amazing what you've become, Jan, and just what you've accomplished. And it's just really, really cool. And, I'm honored to have you say that I played a small role in it. I don't quite believe you, but I'll take the credit. And it's just really cool.
yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on the show today. And we'll make sure we put links to your books down in the description below so everyone can grab a
Cool.
copy if it really speaks to them.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks.